welcome to DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf, and I am joined by Riley Fessler and Minna Stein. How are you guys doing today?
Not too bad.
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. What are we going to start off with today, Riley?
President Trump announced his intention to ask Congress to extend federal control over Washington, D.C.'s police force beyond 30 days. Trump claimed that the congressional action could be a model for other U.S. cities, such as Chicago, that he claims have failed to address crime. However, legal experts noted that Washington, D.C. is a unique situation due to the federal law, the District of Columbia Home Rule Act, which does not apply to other cities. In response to the federalization of the police force, Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser noted that violent crime in the city had hit a 30-year low last year, and the police chief, Pamela Smith, framed the federalization as a collaboration rather than a direct takeover.
Yeah, I was listening to Morning Joe this morning. They were talking about it, and they were going, well, this is a trap for Democrats, because if you go out against this, you're not, it looks like you're soft on crime. Folks, this is not about crime. If it were about crime, they would be aiming at cities where crime was on the rise, whereas Washington has seen crime decline. This is about exerting presidential power in an inappropriate and illegal way to extend the influence of the president so that he can use it in the future against demonstrations, against his opponents, and potentially to disrupt elections. This is about an abuse of presidential power. So it's not a trap for Democrats. The idea that he would somehow extend this to these other cities proves that. He doesn't have any right to do that. There is no national emergency, as he tried to suggest yesterday. There is no grounds for doing this. This is just a chance to intervene and increase presidential power. And literally every single day, one of the goals of this White House is, how do we make presidential power greater than it's ever been? How do we acquire more power? Because they know that the Congress that they have right now and the Supreme Court that they have right now are really unlikely to stand up to them. What I wonder is, what do they think is going to happen when a Democrat is president, should a Democrat ever be president again? What if a Democrat, and this is an example that was brought up by Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor in one of her decisions, what happens when a Democrat says, something? We have a gun emergency in the United States, which we really do. And the Second Amendment really only grants certain rights. And as a result, I'm going to ban assault weapons by emergency order. I'm going to ban silencers. I'm going to ban a lot of large magazines and so forth for these weapons. Are the Republicans then going to just sort of say, well, yeah, of course, presidents have these powers now. They can do anything by executive order. Of course not. This is not just overreach and abuse of power, but it is very one-sided, and they will fight like hell if any Democrat ever tries to do it to them.
A federal appeals court ruled 2-1 in favor of President Trump, allowing his administration to continue freezing or terminating billions in foreign aid, including funds for global health and HIV/AIDS programs. The court determined that the international aid groups challenging the freeze lacked legal standing, reversing a lower court's injunction, but not addressing the constitutionality of the funding termination. Critics, including dissenting Judge Florence Pan and aid organizations, argue the decision undermines congressional authority and endangers global health efforts.
Yeah, this is kind of, the law being its most petty and obtuse, right? They say, well, these people don't have standing, but they don't tackle the core issue, which is that the Constitution of the United States designates the Congress for controlling the power of the purse, determining what is spent and what is not spent. And it is the job of the president to execute the guidelines, the instructions, the legislation that are provided by the Congress. The president doesn't have the ability to pick and choose. It is unconstitutional. And to say, well, sorry, these guys don't have standing, so we're not going to address the constitutionality of this when there is an urgent need to address it because this particular decision weakens the United States grievously, is as far as I'm concerned, dropping the ball on the part of the court.
Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich announced plans to build over 3,000 new homes in the controversial E1 settlement in the occupied West Bank. This project has been internationally condemned for decades because it would effectively sever the West Bank from occupied East Jerusalem, thus obstructing the territorial continuity needed for a future Palestinian state. Smotrich explicitly stated that the construction would bury the idea of a Palestinian state, a sentiment echoed by his claim that the land was given to Jews by God. This decision follows recent announcements by several countries to recognize a Palestinian state, which Israel has denounced.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you got to ask, if God is out there, why are there not lightning bolts coming down from the heavens to people who sort of grab on to the name of a higher power and suggest that it justifies their actions? This is incredibly destructive action. And it reveals that, the goal of this Israeli government is to essentially eliminate any prospect of Palestinian self-determination, which is against international law, is against the interests of the United States and the international community, and given the way that they're conducting it, ranges from being immensely cruel to being, as in the case of Gaza, a series of war crimes. This administration in Israel is an obstacle to peace, and it must go. Unfortunately, it seems unlikely that it will go anytime soon, with elections probably not coming until early next year. If you're interested in more of this and you're a member, you can go and listen to our Need to Know that we did with the head of policy of the J Street organization, who just got back from Israel a couple of days ago. Great conversation on the future of Israel. If you're not a member, early next week, that conversation will be available to you. I really recommend you spend some time with it. It'll provide you with interesting insights into how the situation has changed, what might happen if there is an election, what it means for the U.S.
Senator Chris Murphy is breaking from his Democratic colleagues by opposing bipartisan government funding talks, arguing that cooperating with President Trump's administration only legitimizes what he calls an illegal and anti-democratic process. As the top Democrat on the Homeland Security Appropriations subcommittee, Murphy has voted against multiple funding bills, not because of their content, but because he believes Trump will ignore them and Republicans won't defend congressional authority. His bold stance, coupled with national visibility, moves like launching a PAC, has fueled speculation about a potential 2028 presidential run.
Yeah, well, setting aside any possibility of his political future, Murphy has a point, and it ties to what we were just talking about. If the Congress is going to go and pass laws, and then the president is going to ignore them, what's the point of passing the laws? And if the president is going to abuse the power, who's going to stand up to him and say, no, you can't do that? The Democrats, that's their job as the opposition party. Frankly, it's the job of everybody in Congress, because they have taken an oath to uphold the Constitution, and the way the president currently acting is unconstitutional. But doing something, taking a stand, saying, no, we're not going to play this game, is the right way to approach it. And I give Chris Murphy kudos for trying.
After becoming the new chairman of the Kennedy Center, President Trump personally announced this year's honorees: George Strait, Sylvester Stallone, Gloria Gaynor, Kiss, and Michael Crawford. He broke from tradition by naming the recipients himself and by announcing that he would host the ceremony, a role previously held by Caroline Kennedy. Trump indicated that he was heavily involved in the selection process, even suggesting he might choose himself for a future award, and hinting at renaming the venue the Trump Kennedy Center. This marks a new era for the institution, which Trump has vowed to overhaul, citing what he calls its woke agenda and replacing its board with loyalists.
Yeah, I mean, this is comical on one level because this guy's ego really knows no bounds, and he has entered the territory that you see in only the most extreme dictatorships, where they try to create a cult of personality around their leaders. The cults are crazier around the crazier leaders, and that's what we're getting here. The idea that he's going to, be a song and dance man and host the Kennedy Center honors, that he's going to pick the honorees, that he's going to name the Kennedy Center after himself, that they're naming it. They want to name an opera house in the Kennedy Center after Melania. This is cuckoo, absolutely cuckoo, and nobody is standing up to it. But of course, there's something bigger and more dangerous going on here, as is almost always the case with the moves of this administration. Because simultaneous to doing this, they are announcing, as we discussed yesterday, a review of the content of the exhibits in 8 different Smithsonian museums. They are trying to alter, through such a move, U.S. history, through the Kennedy Center move. What kind of culture is celebrated? What kind of things can be explored by artists on the stage of a national arts center? What kind of art is acceptable? What kind of art is not acceptable? This is, again, what dictatorships do. Hitler targeted the degenerate art of modern era because he associated it with Jews and with gays and with socialists. This is exactly what's happening here. Another page out of that playbook. They want to rid public discourse of ideas and people and forms of expression that they feel threaten their narrative, threaten their political views. It is intolerance institutionalized, and it is something that was specifically prohibited by the First Amendment to the Constitution, precisely because the leaders of this country, when it was founded, realized that things like culture and the free expression in the media, the free expression of ideas, and the freedom of assembly were really what drove a democracy, what drove a society. They realized that's the power, that's the life's blood. And what Trump is trying to do in his escalation of the cultural war in the United States is to drain the life's blood out of our system so we become a zombie state that follows MAGA rules wherever they, dictate we go. Okay, well, that's it. That's our last story for today. We encourage you to listen to our Deep State Radio from yesterday, in which we looked forward with some Russia experts at the Putin-Trump summit that will take place in Alaska tomorrow. And of course, we've got Words Matter with Norm Ornstein coming to you a little bit later today. So there's lots, even though it's the middle of summer, to help get you ready to go back to school, which weirdly, from my perspective, some places are already starting to do. Shouldn't that wait till after Labor Day? When did all this going to school in August thing start? I don't know. Anyway, for somebody, it's back to school. Have a good back to school. For us, we are ramping up for a really exciting fall, and we hope you will be there for it with us. We'll see you here tomorrow. Until then, thank you, Riley. Thank you, Minna. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.